At the beginning of the 21st century, Brazil was in the grip of euphoria. The nation had become a great oil power. President Lula took a big gamble on deep-sea oil, and he won. Incredible riches sprang forth from the seabed, riches that those in power promised to share.
Oil will give our young people the opportunity to study, to get what they never had. I want every one of every worker's children to have the chance to go to university until people call them doctor. And I want this to happen throughout the country.
Euphoria, enthusiasm, and carefree spending. Brazil won the right to host the Football World Cup. And then the 2016 Olympic Games. The sky was the limit. 15 years down the line, the oil boom is in a sorry state. By the end of 2014, the national oil company Petrobras was mired in a gigantic corruption scandal. Oil prices were in a tailspin. The national oil company's actions were erratic, and voices were beginning to clamor against the dramatic rise in pollution, not to mention the Olympic sites to be. At the beginning of 2015, Brazil still has oil. But Brazilians know that they will have more problems to share than prosperity. Oil is no longer the pipe dream it was.
Vai mandar alguém aqui. Podemos pedir a colaboração dos amigos que fazem alguma filmagem de mandar alguns recortes pra gente dessas filmagens.
Alexander and his friends stopped dreaming a long time ago. The year 2000, to be precise, when Brazil suffered its first oil slick. And Petrobras devastated the fishing grounds in Guanabara Bay, near Rio. Alexander may well fight the good fight, forming a fishermen's union, but no one ever received any compensation from Petrobras. This angry little fisherman has become a thorn in the side of the oil men, to the point where he has received regular death threats and has had to be placed under police protection. Even 3 years ago, he was not mincing his words.
We have refineries here and loads of pipelines. But there's no development. This is a poor area. We have a dilapidated hospital, a makeshift school. The roads aren't tarmacs. No one is rich. There aren't any jobs in any industry, not in oil, not with Petrobras. So where's the growth? There's nothing but negatives. They get all the money and we just get the pollution.
3 years on, Alexander has not given up his struggle against the oil companies and the myriad businesses who depend on them. He has successfully brought about the closure of a number of illegal businesses. He still receives threats, but now he has no police protection. He had to leave his village and has been moved to a city far away by the authorities, moving from one alleged safe house to another.
This is Alexander's past. I can see myself in this picture here with my canoe, my friends' canoes. I would fish, waiting for nighttime before going out fishing again. The reality for Alexander today is a solitary man, his canoe broken up on the beach, a lone man on the seashore, close to the sea, yet far from it at the same time. All that's missing is the crosses of my dead friends. There are 7 of them already.
He is at the head of a modest organization which is trying to safeguard fishing rights in the bay. Fishing is the only means of survival for many families. But the expansion of the areas devoted to oil activities increases the number of prohibited zones. These are enforced by private security companies or the army, whose methods are increasingly ruthless.
Take my boat. For a start, right here, a Navy ship just rammed me. My engine casing was smashed to bits. The Navy did that. And as they went through us, they said they were going to sink us all. It's one big mafia. They're all in it together. The Navy gives the orders, and Petrobras too, who own the rigs, all of them, part of the same mafia. They just want to screw the fishermen. They even killed some fishermen. Nem from Surui died not long ago. He fished over there too. He got a bullet in the head. This boat has sustained so much damage that it can't even be repaired.
We're tired. I'm 55 years old. Petrobras is taking over all our space. Where am I supposed to work tomorrow? I'm 55. Is any business going to give me a job? No, it's not.
People here are under few illusions where the high-profile arrests of corrupt oil company directors are concerned.
We're just going to continue having the same problems in the bay. I have no hope, but it would be nice. Maybe it's a pipe dream. That during these hearings they talk about the fishermen who have died, because all of these companies are up to their necks in this enormous scandal. They're all implicated in the murders and threats against fishermen from our association or from other communities.
However, for once, Brazilian justice has been investigating and shown the collusion between politicians, the dishonest directors of Petrobras, and the big companies with links to the oil industry. A collusion that has cost the national company at least 3 billion euros. Petrobras has refused to have any contact with the press, but it has had to explain itself to the judges.
Esse diretor, Paulo Roberto Costa, que foi preso,
one ex-director of Petrobras, Paulo Roberto Costa, who was arrested, admitted that he was in fact paid by a political party to be a man on the inside, whose job was to cream off 1% of the big oil fields' turnover on behalf of the political parties. From then on, it was clear that the other directors operated in the same way. Brazil's big engineering companies had formed themselves into a cartel and came to an agreement that they would share out the big Petrobras oil fields between them to avoid competition. So bribing a director to the tune of 1% here, 2% there, was beneficial to these companies because it allowed them to work in league with the directors, who in return allowed the cartel to operate. Not only had the cartel portioned out the market, but it was also hiking up prices. So Petrobras was not only tarnished by the bribes attached to their contracts, but also tarnished by their practice of overbilling.
This ruthlessly organized plunder allowed them to buy the goodwill of several political parties, including the one in power. A practice as old as Brazil itself, and one that Alexandre knows can be found at every rung of the ladder, even at the bottom. It's to bring this to wider attention that he spends most of his time on the new oil routes along the coastline of Rio de Janeiro and Espírito Santo states, where 85% of the country's oil production is concentrated primarily at sea. But there are also land-based drilling sites, and more importantly, vital logistical sites, terminals, refineries, shipyards, ports, and docks. Along several hundred kilometers of coastline, the oil industry is laying waste all before it in the name of progress and the necessity for an independent national energy source. Alexandre doesn't want to shatter President Lula's dreams, but he wants to explain to others what has happened to them out there in the Guanabara Bay and to try and organize some kind of resistance. Today, accompanied by other community militants, he is driving to San Mateus in the very north of the area, where they're drilling in the deep-sea oil fields. They'll be met by Katia de Peña. She's a fighter. For 30 years, she and her father fought their powerful neighbor, a huge cellulose factory which dreamed of kicking them out so that they could expand their eucalyptus plantations. She succeeded in holding on to her 16 hectares, but for the last 10 years, she has had to battle a far more fearsome beast, Petrobras. In Brazil, you may own the surface of your land, but anything underground belongs to the state. So Petrobras was legally permitted to dig 2 oil wells on her land. Each well requires 1 hectare of land. By 2017, there will be another 20 here. And Katia will be left with nothing but whatever compensation Petrobras deigns to give her.
Você vai ter que como diz, vai me acompanhar. Então, aqui é propriedade. De 2008 para cá, nós não recebemos o que a Petrobras.
Since 2008, we haven't received the compensation that Petrobras had promised us. So we carry on working. One year, we got a check for less than €1. It's a disgrace.
And that noise, is that the machine?
Yes, it goes on all day and night, non-stop, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's a noise we never had to put up with before. I'm not against our country trying to develop, but it needs to do so while respecting the people who live on the land. Development shouldn't go hand in hand with exploitation, but we're being exploited by our country's development. I don't know what I'm going to do when they no longer let me walk around my property. They might kick me off my land and my workplace, like Alex, who no longer has access to his territory. Each time I come here, I find renewed energy to fight for my people. But the day they take that away from me, I don't know what will happen.
But you're not alone.
Maybe I'll go crazy and explode. Maybe I'll turn myself into a bomb.
For Alex and his friends, this extreme would be out of the question, of course. Their fight must remain democratic, peacefully bringing together all of those left behind by progress. Behind the Da Peña property, the cellulose factory is still working at full throttle, unaware and unworried about these troubles.
Open the window. You'll smell the air, or rather the stink of progress. Some say it's the smell of money. I'm not sure money smells as bad as that. Over there is the Petrobras station.
Explaining, gathering, organizing. Difficult in a country of this immense size and with no great tradition of struggle. This morning at Residencial, not far from where the Da Peña live, Katia has managed to organize a meeting with the local fishermen to inform them and to give them a chance to express themselves.
You can't see it yet, but it won't be long. Out at sea there are ships laying cables 1.5 kilometers long, which are used to tow explosives.
They're already doing it.
What, here? I didn't know, so they've already started.
Yes, yes. And the dynamite they use for searching the seabeds kills everything on the bottom, kills everything that lives nearby. It kills everything. There's nothing left alive because the dynamite bombs they use now aren't like the old days when they were just 50-gram sticks. Nowadays they weigh 100 kilos.
Today, Katia feels a little less alone. She has been fighting Petrobras for ages. She was one of the first people expelled from the area, but she always refused to go. Ever since, she has squatted on what used to be her land, dotted with boreholes, and alongside 28 other families, she is fighting to get her land back. She and her children have virtually no doubt that the oil companies and the council will stop at nothing in order to make them leave.
When they first occupied our land, if we hadn't gone back to the village, we'd all have been caught in the forest fire. They started the fire and then accused us. The guy from the oil people said in a public hearing that we'd started the fire, whereas it was quite the opposite. We're the ones who put it out.
Katia and her family have nowhere else to live and can no longer rely on the aid or materials allocated to legal farmers. Therefore, things just get harder and harder.
Katia was a farmer. Katia was a landowner, owned Petrobras land. So why does Katia now have to rely on social aid if she has 28 Petrobras wells on her land? I want President Dilma. I want her to know that I, Katia dos Santos, rely on handouts. I rely on social aid because of Petrobras. When Lula plunged his hands into crude oil, saying that we would all be Brazilian oil.
Everywhere around her, the oil industry weaves its web, from the depths of the earth to the bottom of the ocean, upsetting life, ecosystems, and sometimes just common sense, when nothing is maintained and everything rusts fast because of the tropical humidity. Just details on the oil road, a mere bagatelle to the engineers, technicians, financiers, and the some 400,000 employees of the Brazilian oil industry who are very proud of their capital Macaé, a place where Alexandre has never set foot. 30 years ago, Macaé was a tiny fishing port. Today, it's the bridgehead of the offshore oil tankers who come here to unload the bulk of the deposits from the Campos Basin. The maritime activity never stops. Petrobras pays its taxes on the nail, as well as a good $100 million in royalties a year. The town, therefore, is rich and can afford to give its seafront a makeover. But this only affects the tiny minority of its 230,000 inhabitants. Behind the scenes, things are rather less rosy. The oil boom attracted all of the neighboring states disenfranchised, who languish in favelas which are among the most deprived in Brazil. Full of no-go areas, forgotten citizens with no stable employment, no hospitals, nothing. The miracle did not happen.
Go to the town centre. There they're mending the pavements. But they forgot that the people who live on the outskirts have been abandoned. Yes, abandoned. When it rains, we have to walk through the mud.
There are many politicians who come here, but none of them has helped. They only come here at election time, make their promises, and then disappear.
They use the favela.
Always. They've always used the favela. They come here, make a whole bunch of promises. Sometimes they don't even promise that much. Give a little money here, a bag of cement there, and then as soon as the elections are over, they're nowhere to be seen.
No skilled jobs, no prospects, no urban development program. Macaé is a disaster. In Alexandre's opinion, all this could soon come to pass for another coastal town, Barra do Riacho, a little to the north. He has come to see Seu Vicente, who also runs a small fishermen's organization. There are about 800 people here, but their life has become a living hell since 2012, when a huge oil rig construction plant was built here. Owned by a large Singaporean company, Jurong Aracruz is in the process of digging an access canal to its facility.
Jurong dredges 24 hours a day, 350 days a year. It never stops for a minute. It's going to destroy our entire coast. It's the worst carnage I've ever seen in the north of the state. It's killed everything. Everything has been decimated. Fish, shrimp, because this basin used to be full of crayfish, crustaceans, and fish.
Goodbye traditional fishing, hello heavy industry and social upheaval. The population of Seu Vicente's village has grown from 3,000 to 8,000 in just a few years and is growing every day. This beach will soon disappear beneath the embankments, and the last few fishermen will have to leave their seaside favela to make way for the big businesses. The rule here is move anyone who gets in your way. In 2011, the powers that be did not hold back when it came to evacuating 500 families who were too close to a Petrobras depot. Ever since, they've been waiting for aid to help them relocate, but they wait in vain. Despite the fact that the city receives 10 million euros a year in royalties, which by law they're supposed to allocate to social programs, nothing gets done, and the town council stays quiet. Except when one of its members, sickened and ready to resign, sheds light on the petty local corruptions which bear a remarkable resemblance to the big national scandals.
What's happening is that now the money is being put into gardening projects and pavement edging, operations that are being overcharged. It adds up to millions of euros when there is no need. Petroleum resources are not being used where they ought to be.
Obviously, they are not lost for everyone. Gardening companies, for example, are doing very well. And the lack of social programs, schools or hospitals doesn't stop job seekers from flowing in from all over the place. And with them come violence, drug trafficking and prostitution. Jurong in Barra do Riacho devours scores of workers. But the problem is that it's not necessarily a good employer.
Wednesday morning, we're getting ready to go on strike. They're not paying the workers. They're saying they're going to close the site and go back to Singapore, that they're not going to drill here anymore. It might be a form of blackmail, but we've no other explanation. On top of which, they're involved in the Petrobras political bribery scandal.
Jurong is not the only company in the sector to be caught between legal action and the recession. At the start of 2015, Brazilian oil seems to be suffering from a hangover. You have to search long and hard along the coast to find anyone still enjoying the economic boom it generated. There's always the small town of Kisama to illustrate Lula's dream. There has been no misappropriation of royalties here. Political will and politicians of more integrity have allowed the spoils to be shared out more equitably. A great advert, with a good public hospital, great provisions for all ages, and a genuine drive to improve education.
The great pride of Kisama is that using the royalties, we've managed to offer our citizens an education, from their primary years until they get to university, with bursaries to help them study and also free transport.
Kisama is still benefiting from all this, but even here there are concerns. The royalties will fall, as will the benefits from the oil companies, and so financing of all these projects may become problematic. A 100 kilometers or so north of Rio State, there are places where the royalties can no longer make a difference. Places where the effects of the oil industry are irreversible. At San João de Barra, the ecological disaster is plain to see. The coastal roads have crumbled away. The sea is flooding lands and homes. A large swathe of the coastline has quite simply vanished from under the noses of the inhabitants, including militants like Marcos Pedlovsky, who predicted this but still can't believe it has actually happened.
Our erosion problem here has got far worse over the last 3 years. We've had the disappearing road, and our electricity network was destroyed. We came to the conclusion that it was a direct consequence of the building of Açu Port's Terminal 2. Tragically, because of the lack of sea defences, there is a community of 200 families living just next to the port being built, which is under threat of complete destruction by the sea.
The presumed offender, the Leviathan Açu Port. An immense project which was intended to make this Brazilian township the biggest port in Latin America. With a shipyard, 2 terminals covering 90 square kilometers, it will handle a variety of minerals and the country's greatest asset, oil. Both are the passions of its creator, who was the richest man in Brazil and all of Latin America, the mogul Eike Batista. Eike Batista is the American dream, Brazilian style. His rise to the top has been meteoric. In 2012, according to Forbes, he became the 7th richest man in the world, with all that entails. For the whole country, he is living proof that the rich and powerful can also be Brazilian.
We have explored 90 wells in under 3 years. That is a far greater volume than any other foreign country.
The oil production of the AGX company, part of EBX Group, is now underway. $3 billion have been invested in research, and it is predicted that between now and 2015, it will produce 400,000 barrels a day.
Eike and EBS devour all before them and convince everyone. Their brazen success seduced Lula and then President Dilma, who were hugely proud of this Brazilian entrepreneur who was contributing to their petroleum dream. The politicians would not hold back in their support. However, Eike's success was a huge bluff, which a few months later turned into a colossal bankruptcy. In early 2013, he was forced to admit that oil production was a mere 25% of what was predicted. His empire came tumbling down. From being worth $43 billion in 2012, EBX is worth a mere $3 billion today. The law ceased his toys and he had to sell the port of Açu to Prumo, an American investment company. The company's practices were strangely similar to those of its predecessor. Marcos still counts the cost each time he visits.
Hello. These people are French journalists who are making a documentary. This is a public road, isn't it? They've already called Primo to say they're here. I'm not saying Primo authorized it, just that Primo knows they're here. There's a reason for this conversation. We're on a public road. Under the Brazilian Constitution, you are not constrained to identify yourself on a public highway. It's a way of controlling the territory. They are trying to control a territory which is in fact public.
Aiko Batista's excesses have left indelible marks. The tycoon had ring-fenced his territory. His greed devoured 90 square kilometers of land, which he made his kingdom. A private realm defended by a Praetorian guard that the new owners were more than happy to hold on to.
That's another control car belonging to Primo's private security company. There are a lot of private security companies here responsible for controlling the locals and the activities of any people not involved with the port. If we turn up, within seconds, several security companies get here. Take this gate, for example. It shouldn't be here. It's a public highway. This gate stops any access to areas where there is water. It's a very subtle approach. Okay, not that subtle, as it's a gate. But what I mean is that it isn't aggressive in essence, but it implies problems for the region's inhabitants. It's completely illegal and it must be condemned.
Marcos is a bit like Alexander, a true militant. But he's not a fisherman or a farmer. He's an academic, sociologist, and geographer. He knows the law, so the peasants trust him. Now 80, Seu Rinaldo has lost half his land. 15 hectares were confiscated by the port's industrialists in return for a modest compensation, which the old man obviously refused. A 5-year legal battle and still no outcome. Brazilian law forbids the expropriation of fertile land. But, as always, the authorities in the pockets of the industrialists have let it happen in the name of public interest, the nation's petroleum energy, using surprisingly rudimentary methods.
How long have you been here?
I've been here for 45, 50 years. They took my land. They came here. They put their sign up without telling me. They said they'd put the sign up on my land. So I went and I removed the sign. I went there and I removed it and I threw it away. 4 days later, the sign was back in the same place. They destroyed my enclosures. I couldn't distinguish my land from anybody else's. I took down their sign, chopped it up and burned it. To fight them, you see. Because they did things without warning me. And then they turned up with a little bit of paper, a page from a notebook. Not a notice of eviction, it was nothing. This is the paper. It's got their names on it, the men's names. It's from their lawyer. There's his name, Guilherme. He gave me the piece of paper. He's one of the company's lawyers, Guilherme. He just gave me the piece of paper like that.
He just wrote the word like that?
Yeah, he just gave me the piece of paper like that.
And he wrote down the land's value by hand.
Yeah, he just turned up with this piece of paper.
And this is the only official document you have?
The only one they gave me. This is the value of that land over there. This is another one.
Seu Rinaldo made several copies of this document, but the original always stays with him. It's the only tangible proof of the coming of the people who ruined his life.
Não está gostando muito dessa aqui, não. Acabou.
You like cows?
Eu gosto.
Yes, I do. And to tell you the truth, I prefer cows to money.
Disseram para me vender porque dá muito dinheiro.
I sell them because they're worth a lot of money. But I say that money has no value. But cows have a lot of value. This thing really bothers her, and she likes me to cut it.
Aí. Luzia não tirou. Agora, eu não tenho ideia de
I have no intention of leaving here.
Quando morrer, né?
I'll leave when I die.
Se quiser for apanhar, ele vai fazer o quê?
But if they decide to take it all, what can I do?
Nós estamos brigando, nós temos há 5 anos.
We've been fighting this battle over this bit of land for 5 years. This business is really dragging.
Seu Rinaldo and other local farmers joined forces to protest. Initially, there were around 60 of them, but fear, weariness and threats whittled down their forces.
There is a group of 15 or 20 of us. All the others gave in because of money or fear, because nobody here is used to the police or the law. Nobody is used to that kind of thing. When they came here, they said that if we didn't leave within 2 hours, they would send in the bulldozers and destroy everything. And because of that pressure, everybody backed down and left. Now most of them have sold up. If anyone should be making money, it's us, the ones who live off the land. These lands belong to my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, and now me. And they want to make money off our backs. That's what it is. We saw what was happening on television. Everyone saw it. They took all his cars away from him. But there must be something else behind it.
Expropriations are not the only problem. A canal has also had to be dug to allow the oil tankers access to the port. These trucks, constantly toing and froing, are transporting sand dredged up from the seabed. Miles of artificial dunes have appeared, poisoning the land. The sea sand has salinated the soil all the way down to the water table. Even if Seu Rinaldo's land was returned to him, it would doubtless be useless. The salt has killed everything it has touched. The worst affected is Senor Durval. The entirety of his land has been contaminated by the saline dunes. Now he cannot plant anything, as nothing will grow.
Come here. Look at this.
Como tá aí na russo de sal,
this salty crust.
Nas terras molhadas que apresenta, ó.
The earth is wet.
Vendo aí?
Look, here.
Olha só.
And there. It's salt. I've lost my crops of sugarcane, pineapple, the kepi I used to feed the animals. I've been buying cane to feed them ever since because the salt destroyed all of mine. I replanted some, but it just won't grow. The soil retains all the salt. I hadn't realized that salt was such a destructive poison. It's sad, and there is no solution. How can we regenerate the soil? It's very sad. They have made all my sacrifices pointless. It's so sad. When the salt leached in, and I saw that everything had died, I couldn't sleep for thinking about how the animals were going to survive. And I lost all my crops. I said to myself, what am I going to do about these animals? I had to transport them elsewhere, rent a pasture further away. All my cane is dead and I had to buy in. I got myself a lawyer and went to court, but up to now nobody has come to speak to me. I live in hope. I believe I can win because I have proof. People who have none can't take their case to court. But I have proof. I told the lawyer, but it's dragging. He said, don't worry, it'll happen. They're going to have to make amends. I'll wait and see.
From here, petroleum just looks like dead soil and men condemned to exile. It also looks like anger and incomprehension, as information has not been forthcoming. Now, the public meeting which is to be held at the town council is at the forefront of the minds of everyone in São João de Barra. The new owners of the port, Prumo, are going to have to account for the catastrophic erosion of the coastline to the inhabitants. An unhoped-for meeting with a string of elected representatives in mid-electoral campaign and a representative of the port company, ostensibly their environmental expert. He is quite young and clearly ill at ease.
I have an issue with the assertion that the port of Açu should not exist. Because the port is clearly a great project. There are a great number of questions to be discussed with the local community. But these should only really concern people who have economic interest in the São João community. This is a project which offers employment opportunities, taxes to be raised for the community, and opportunities for our youth to progress professionally. We are here to work in partnership with the town. There are no elements whatsoever that currently link the coastal erosion of Açu to its port.
The tone is set. There is no question that the company will accept any responsibility. In order to support its position, it has recruited a highly reputable oceanographer from Rio University.
As the sediments drift from south to north, it's impossible to make a link between any sedimental retention caused by the port and the erosion of Barra do Açu.
Let the people have their say, please.
We want to hear the citizens of Açu.
I was born in 1944. I'm 70. I was born in Açu. The water has always risen, but nothing like this. Now the level rises every month, and each time Açu village gets flooded. I was born here. I'm 70 years old and I've never seen anything like it.
What I said was that in the same way that we had an abnormally severe drought at the end of the year, this is the same.
I brought 4 photographs which show how far the sea has advanced. This is January 2013. The sea is far away. And now this is July 2013. And finally, a photograph taken this year. And the sand has completely disappeared. Billions of tons of sand have just gone. So you're talking about it receding just a little. It's actually more than 300 meters. You can come and see it for yourselves.
Give them to him. Give the professors the photos.
The meeting is over. For the company's officials, the communication operation has been a fiasco. They're starting to get anxious.
I'm available to discuss these issues anytime you like, but right now, I have people waiting to see me.
Can we see you some other day?
I'm sorry, I really must go. I'm sorry.
We're at your disposal. We can arrange a meeting whenever you like.
Thank you. Thanks.
The meeting will never take place. The company's directors flatly refuse. Marcos, for his part, is happy. The fighting spirit of the inhabitants is partly the fruit of his labor.
I think it has become harder for Primo to deny any responsibility. And it's interesting to see that the local population has been very critical of the company's technical report because they live with the loss of the sand strip every day, and they know that it all started with the building of the breakwater. It's interesting because the expert is usually not prepared to fly in the face of popular common sense. Common knowledge is sometimes more convincing than scientific theory. I think that is one positive outcome of the meeting.
Small comfort in the face of the emergency. In San João, at the beginning of 2015, every day the sea gobbles up a little more beach. At the same time, all over Brazil, the population is up in arms about the Petrobras scandal and the corruption. The country is divided. The president's opponents are very angry. They're demanding that she stand down, and she has only just been democratically re-elected. The opposition go as far as to rouse Brazil's old demons, those of the erstwhile dictatorship. In the opposite camp, the president's supporters don't want to give up the dream of sharing and justice promised by oil. And even though not one promise has been kept, their ideal is untouched. We are oil men, we are not corrupt, the oil workers write on their placards. They fear just one thing, that the liberals and the financial sector will take advantage of Petrobras' difficulties purely in order to demand its complete privatization.
Oh, this corruption just because Petrobras is state-owned. Yes, Petrobras is a nationalized industry, but all the others are privately owned. And we have thousands of examples of private companies that are corrupt too. There are cases like SBM Holland. Corruption does not favor the public or the private. Just imagine if we privatize Petrobras. There will be even more. No, that's not the way. There is no need to privatize Petrobras to end corruption. It would be a great help if the politicians stopped interfering and concentrated on the technical functioning. Why on earth should it be the Workers' Party which decides who should be the president of Petrobras? Does it know Petrobras? Does it know people who know Petrobras? But we know who are the best people. We're waiting for that.
Petrobras has changed its president, but he's already the subject of a polemic. He comes straight from the ranks of the party in power. Bad habits are tough to break, even when the Republic's public prosecutors cause heads to roll and publicly give instructions to politicians, senators, and governors. Alexandre is tempted to applaud the fact that the judiciary has decided to have a clean-up. But back in Rio, he finds that his bay is undergoing a new tragedy. Fish have been dying in great numbers for more than a month. Today, it makes him want to weep to see the bay.
As far as I'm concerned, it comes from over there, from the refinery, the Petrobras petrochemical complex. It's almost as though the fish are showing us the advance of the pollution. If it's not that, then there must be a pipeline on the seabed which is leaking. Probably gas or some sort of chemical compound. There's more than just hydrocarbon going under there. There's all sorts of other stuff, other products.
os espelhos luminosos, ó.
Look down there at the reflections that come up. That's chemicals.
Isso é produto químico.
On the little island of Paqueta, they've resorted to picking up the dead fish with a bulldozer. For their part, the fishermen have improvised solutions for survival. Disconcerting and very sad.
The prawns I sell, they're not even prawns from Guanabara Bay. They're farmed prawns. The prawns I work with, they're captive-bred prawns because they're from the bay. Nobody wants them.
Have you ever seen this happen before?
Never before. Never before.
And how long have you been fishing?
I've been fishing for 25 years.
We've never seen this before.
Alex and the Brazilians would very much like to know what's killing the fish in the bay. Chemicals, drain water, the heat. The authorities have carried out some analysis, but the results have never been published. Even worse, the town hall has announced that it's withdrawing its undertaking to clean up the bay before the sailing trials for the Olympic Games. Too expensive. The sportsmen will have to sail in a rubbish bin which the first teams of site inspectors will discover.
We sail in a temperature of 30 degrees, and normally we would swim and be covered in sea spray all the time. But here we're a bit more cautious because we don't know what's down there. We can see the water is brown and there's all sorts of garbage floating on it and dead fish. Lots of them. It's quite surprising. We're used to sailing all over the world, and here, I must confess that this puts me off a bit. At any rate, one doesn't feel like bathing in it, that's for sure. Not even to splash some on to cool off. It's ironic because apart from that, it's a little paradise, but that rather spoils the enjoyment. Well, at some point it becomes a problem because if we have athletes training for the Games for 4 years, if we have athletes that fall ill on day one because of a bug, that will cause a big fuss. And I think the government had better look seriously at the problem.
But the government, whether federal or local, has other fish to fry. The Petrobras scandal has tarnished the whole of the political class. Petrobras' share price has plummeted, royalties are falling. The town hall, crippled by debts, can no longer pay its employees' salaries. So the town hall has better things to do than to publish information about the bay's pollution. But it doesn't hesitate to crow as work on other Olympic sites progresses. And for that, the deputy in charge of the ceremony has only the positive thinking method to bring him through.
In 2016, there will be no difficulty. In fact, in all the places where there will be sailing competitions, the 5 routes planned in Guanabara Bay will meet with international standards. The delegations can take up water samples in the bay and have them analyzed in reliable laboratories. Up to now, not one of them has signaled a quality of water not up to the international standards.
Nevertheless, in truth, there are undoubtedly too many dead fish and old fridges floating around in the bay. And so the International Sailing Federation has officially requested the Olympic Committee to recite all sailing trials to the open sea. It considers the waters of the bay to be too dangerous for the smooth running of the trials and for the athletes' health. In any case, the water is just as dangerous for Alexander. Nowadays, the authorities give him police protection because he's going back to his own village. He wants to explain first to his own people why their fish are dying.
We've found out what is killing the fish. They suffered enormous contamination from HAP, a toxic substance that comes from oil. This HAP, that's what's killing the fish. And we've demonstrated that this is so. So why have the Environmental Control Services, the INEI, those who give licenses to these businesses, to offshore activities, those that authorize the refineries to work, why have they not found this out? And why haven't they wanted to publish the reason for this massacre? They say they can't clean it up. It's a lack of political willpower.
Total silence from the authorities and even from the media. Alexander's announcement went unnoticed. But the fisherman is used to this and has lodged a complaint to the ministry. 2 years ago, he managed to get an illegal installation closed down. But this time, no complaint will be able to clear up the bay's pollution.
An island that had fish, trees, birds. Look what they've done to a living Guanabara Bay, a dying Guanabara Bay. It's absurd. Look, even more dead fish.
Alexandre is in no doubt. The Petrobras affair, the big bosses in prison, an independent judiciary at last investigating astounding misappropriation. All these new moves have changed nothing in the bay. Lula's dream continues to wreak havoc. Every day, Alex and those around him can see that progress is not kind to their little paradise. A paradise which becomes more and more dangerous, and where very soon there will be no place for them.